Oh man, this is big, and almost no one in the West is talking about it. The corporate corrupt media are ignoring it, of course. What China, Russia, and North Korea have done will change everything in the biggest way possible. Their trade and economic expansion has the West crapping its pants, which could push us into World War III. Now, many, myself included, believe we're already in World War III, but just wait until the real shooting starts, because that's honestly how Washington sees the world. Rather than spending trillions of dollars on our own infrastructure in the United States, building out our own Belt and Road Initiative with new railroads and infrastructure and shipping lanes and all of that, no, we'd rather enrich the military-industrial complex, give that money to weapons manufacturers like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, enrich those people. Meanwhile, there's people sleeping on the streets of the United States.
The number of homeless people on the streets and in shelters across the U.S. increased significantly this year.
Roads and bridges are a total disaster. Crime is at an all-time high. So apparently America is fine. We'd rather enrich these defense contractors. Well, this week we just got our clearest sign yet that the West is getting desperate. And desperate people do very dangerous things. The United States Air Force Secretary General saying China is prepping for war against the United States. Imagine that. Why would China be preparing for war against the United States? And the warmongers on TV are saying that China is the real threat. We better prepare for war now.
He was making certain his troops understood that war could be around the corner. We have all said the very same thing, that China does have a military advantage right now. More ships, more planes, and certainly more missiles. That is where the general's coming from, because he knows that we're vulnerable and we have got to fix it.
Yeah, the trillions of dollars we spend on our military each year simply isn't enough. We need more weapons. And right on cue, NATO last week launched its biggest military exercises yet to show China and Russia that we mean business. The Pentagon announcing they're also clearing out jungles to build brand new military bases near China. Wait a second, where are the crying liberal environmentalists now? Clearing a forest to build yet another military base? If you're keeping score, the United States now has over 960 military bases around the world. And look how many are sitting in China's backyard. The United States in this interview says they're also clearing off older World War II runways in the Pacific in preparation for war. So why would China be prepping for war? I can't wrap my head around it. Of course you know the answer. Well, the timing of these NATO announcements was perfect as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un traveled by armored train to Moscow, meeting with Putin, agreeing to expand their trade and military partnerships. He toured military facilities, looked at aircraft facilities. He told Putin that he will help fight against NATO's imperialism. This terrified NATO, so much so that NATO-backed Ukraine added Kim Jong-un to their kill list. Yes, a list that NATO keeps for who they'll kill next. Again, desperate people do desperate things. The RAND Corporation, a Washington think tank, wants the United States to go to war with Russia and China in the worst possible way. They just published a laughable new report on North Korea, Russia, and China's imperialist partnership, because they're invading all sorts of countries together, aren't they? Perhaps they forgot the part where the United States now has 960 military bases, dozens right on the back doorstep of China and Russia. But imperialism? Perhaps they should look in the mirror a little bit. The report outlines 3 solutions to deal with Russia and China, the Russia and China threat. The 3 solutions are all military-based. It's laughable. Number 1, they say, is to build a better outline on how we go to war. How exactly do we carry out modern war? Number 2, they say, is to build out massive new weapons and fighting capabilities to use against Russia, China, and North Korea. So weapons. And then number 3 is to build out massive new military forces. So number 1, identify how we go to war. Number 2, build out new weapons. Number 3, build out new forces. All of it leads to war. No peace talks, nothing about building our own economy back at home, helping Americans. No, none of that. Though, of course not. They're terrified of what Russia and China are doing. This week, Russia and China announced a massive new cross-border partnership. You could have heard Biden freaking out in Washington. This is a massive new logistics hub between China and Russia. It'll basically become a joint China-Russia city for oil and natural gas and minerals to be shuttled between the two countries. An amazing partnership. And new numbers out this week show Russia's economy expanding. China, Russia, the BRICS nations have agreed now to use gold as their main backing for their new international currency to settle transactions. They just decided this a few weeks ago. And of course, we knew this was coming. That's why China, Russia, India, all buying up as much gold as possible. Remember, we're told in the West that Russia's economy is collapsing thanks to sanctions. The opposite is true, however. The West's failed sanctions against these countries have only hurt Europe and the United States. This morning, Europe on pace for the euro to continue its plummet in number of losing sessions. Bad news all across Europe as businesses are closing and layoffs continue to rise. And Bloomberg reports this morning that Russian businesses are taking billions out of the European economies and repatriating that money back into Russia, reinvesting those billions back into Russia instead of Europe. And China is supposed to be collapsing thanks to Western sanctions. So is that true? Well, this, according to new data this week, the opposite is happening. China has launched the most advanced semiconductor radar microchip in the world. How did they do that? Under sanctions, by the way. They weren't supposed to be able to do any of that. Guess they found a loophole. And China's economy saw massive growth, according to new data this week. Investors rallied, started buying a lot of Chinese stocks on this news out of China. The U.S., meanwhile, this week saw inflation numbers coming in super hot, and we could see double-digit mortgage rates very soon. Yes, I said double-digit mortgages. Better lock in those mortgages now, especially if you're planning to buy some investment real estate. The U.S. is in real trouble thanks to these Russian sanctions. Now, I spoke to economist and gold expert Peter Schiff this week, who says the Biden administration is lying to you about inflation.
When Joe Biden is out there talking about how inflation is coming down, first of all, he needs to accept some responsibility for how much it went up. So this myth that the inflation problem is over is wrong. It's just getting started.
And of course, now the only way out for them is war. That's exactly what this all points to. Tucker Carlson points out this hot war with Russia is coming, and it's going to happen in the next few months.
What are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway.
And I just want you to remember that the threat here isn't military. The threat is economic. It's the decline of the U.S. dollar. They will try to tell you that China is about to invade or that Russia is about to invade the rest of Europe. It's a lie, of course. The full-scale pullback away from the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency is at the heart of this story. They are lying when they tell you that Russia and China are ready to attack the United States. China is not building military bases in Canada or Mexico. China doesn't have a lot of precious minerals and petroleum, so they need this partnership with Russia. Russia doesn't have semiconductors and electronics, so they need those from China. It's a great symbiotic relationship that has grown by over 40% since the start of the war. And Biden created this. He brought Russia and China together. Saudi Arabia, North Korea, they're all closer thanks to the President of the United States. Now, while at the same time, the U.S. announced they are now $31 trillion in debt. $7 trillion of that is to China. So who has the upper hand right now? This is an economic war that will have people firing real weapons in a true hot war, and we need to pay attention to what's happening right before our eyes and protect our families. So that's the news update part of today's video. Now I want to introduce you to today's sponsor, which is tied directly to the demand for energy production in North America right now in this war over energy, because that's what it is right now, a massive war. If you're an investor, you need to pay attention to what I'm about to show you because you could make a lot of money. Now, this company is called Solar Bank Corporation. Now, pay attention to this. Here is their ticker symbol on the screen. You can write it down. It's SUUNF, like sun. The stock, as of this recording, is trading at $5.93 a share. And an analyst just came out with a price target of $14 a share. Yes, you heard me right. From $5 up to $14 a share. Those aren't my words. Those are analyst words on where they see this price of this stock going. Now, I'm going to show you why they're making this prediction so you understand. First of all, Solar Bank Corp is already a $200 million company with thousands of projects already under their belt. Basically, they build power plants that use solar energy. Yes, utility companies and the governments will come in and hire them to build solar farms on top of buildings or on the ground level plots of land. You know, you have all of that additional office space that can be used to put solar panels on top of. They then use that power to power thousands of homes nearby, as well as large offices and office parks. Again, all of it is solar power exclusively. We are in a war over energy right now across the world. Heck, the United States just blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, for crying out loud, and you see how devastating that's been for Germany and Germany's economy. And President Biden has literally done the stupidest thing possible and emptied our strategic oil reserves. That's right. One economist today says the United States is playing with fire now that our oil reserves are gone. The writing is on the wall, and the West is moving towards clean energy, solar projects, particularly in the biggest way possible because it's now so darn cheap, which I'm going to show you in a moment. It's actually pretty stunning how cheap it is. So this company, SolarBank, has built over 1,000 massive solar development projects. Here are just a few. You can see them right here on your screen. These guys know what they're doing. And the West can't rely on OPEC for oil anymore. And this back and forth with the Saudis and what is China going to do? Right now, they are paying insane prices for gas. And you know it. You just go to the gasoline pump and you see how pricey a gallon of gas is right now. And a barrel of oil is set to go over $100 a barrel, driving prices even higher at the pump. And just so you understand why I'm so bullish on this company, SolarBank is already making millions of dollars in revenue. And now, thanks to the government's push for renewable energy and net zero, they are sitting on a gold mine, not only in terms of tax incentives, but in terms of bonkers growth. Just look at each state across the United States and look at their goals for net zero. This is all over the United States, and their push for renewables is insane right now. The demand for solar production is off the charts, and governments need solar farms. So Canada and the United States will hire this company. They'll engineer the solar farms, and most of the contracts they receive are federal government contracts. And the money that is set aside for net zero right now from the US government and from the Canadian government, it's insanity. It's so much money. Listen to this, $369 billion set aside for these solar projects, $110 billion specifically for solar. So the demand is insane. And if you wanted to invest in solar companies, there are a lot of different ways to do it. You know, you could invest in battery companies. You could invest in the guys that make the converters. You could invest in the companies that are pulling lithium out of the ground for the batteries. But if you wanted to invest in a solar company that handles the entire process of engineering and developing solar farms from soup to nuts, that's where this company comes in. So just as an example, if you're a big Fortune 500 company, right, and you've got a lot of employees, you've got a lot of office parks, and you want to build a solar farm on the top of one of your office parks, just like Apple did, right? Or on the raw land that you happen to own. You call up SolarBank, and they will identify the land, first of all, the best spot to build. They will then engineer the entire project. They get it up and running and producing energy. And so many companies are doing this now because of the insane tax breaks they're getting for using solar. Their entire parking lots are being converted into solar farms. So people pull in for their day's work. They park right underneath a solar panel. How many of you watching right now, when you pull into your office park, are driving in underneath a solar panel right now when you park? That's because the business is making insane tax breaks by installing solar. So even last week during Apple's big iPhone presentation, they spent 10 minutes during the presentation talking about their solar farms and why they're moving to net zero by the year 2030. Apple gets insane tax breaks by building solar on their buildings because the amount of money the government is throwing at renewable energy is astonishing. And the path to net zero in the US is estimated to create $27 trillion in capital spending. The amount of money they're investing in solar incentives is insane. And this company I'm telling you about, SolarBank, is already up 26% this year alone. Just look at this. But let me tell you why I'm so darn bullish on this company. As you know, I invest in energy producers, and these guys build fully functional solar farms and solar plants. They will build them for utility companies, municipalities, huge investment funds. Heck, on my own house right now, I have over 40 solar panels running this entire studio. I have 3 huge batteries. My whole house, our entire studio, is run on solar. I don't use anything off of the grid. I'm producing all of my own energy, and I get tax breaks for doing it as a business. But more importantly, I'm protecting my family as this war over energy ramps up and we head into World War III. And one of these countries decides to flip the switch, stop sending oil to a nation, and then you're in a lot of trouble, right? So now we need to be able to protect our families. And now it's gotten so darn cheap to put up solar. And these panels are so incredibly cheap. I mean, just look at this. Back in 2009, you can see here on this chart, the cost to build solar farms was incredibly expensive. And they totally relied on government grants to build them because it was so costly. But now the costs have plummeted. And it's now the cheapest form of energy to build. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Total 180. The solar industry right now is skyrocketing. So SolarBank is building a really good business here, already a $200 million company and projected to explode in value. Again, analyst price target has this stock hitting $14 a share. Right now, as of this recording, it's trading at $5.93 a share. Now, many of you have sent me very kind emails recently telling me how much money you've made on some of the stocks that we feature here on the show. That's very kind of you. Thank you for those emails. But you guys are the ones doing your own homework. You're doing your own due diligence. I'm just showing you what I found and what my research is showing me, and you're pulling the trigger. So the praise should go to you guys. Again, here is the ticker on your screen. It's on all of the major stock trading platforms: Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, E-Trade. I personally use E-Trade, also Schwab. But I should mention Schwab. Here's just a little public service announcement about Schwab. If you use them, you may have to call them on the phone to place this trade on this stock with Schwab. Just FYI, if you use Schwab. Every platform is different. So that's going to do it for me, guys. We will see you next time.